Note from a channeler. Apparently one common Pleiadian greeting is just standing in front of each other and looking into each other's eyes. That way, it's easy to read the other person's mind and energy, and be read by them. Pleiadians have learned that some Earth humans think it is a bit weird or intense, although in their defense, it's less creepy when the person doing it radiates love and calm. From their perspective, it is weird that we immediately start talking to each other, and not take the moment of time to observe a new person's energy, give them a chance to observe ours. So if you had a dream or a vision with a Pleiadian just calmly looking at you and not saying anything, well, this is one common greeting in their culture. Onto Hakann's message. My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. In your world, the concept of an in-group and an out-group is well known. The idea here is that your in-group are people who belong to your metaphorical tribe, and you're willing to help them, and your out-group are people who don't belong to your metaphorical tribe, and they are potential enemies, and you certainly don't need to go out your way to help them. Today, I would like to expand on that idea a little bit. In reality, it's not so black and white that people perceive others as either the in-group or the out-group. Instead, most people assign different levels of humanity to different people. People often assign full humanity to people in their in-group. So for an individual right-winger, this could be other right-wingers. Some right-wingers will assign full humanity to a black gay right-winger, while other right-wingers will not assign full humanity to a black gay right-winger. Then there are people who assign a large amount of humanity, but not full humanity. So some right-wingers will merely assign a large amount of humanity to a black gay right-winger, but not full humanity. Also, a right-winger might assign a large amount of humanity, but not full humanity, to a moderate left-winger. Then there are people who assign a small amount of humanity. A right-winger might assign only a small amount of humanity to an activist left-winger, who potentially blocks traffic to protest climate change, for example. The right-winger might assign zero humanity to, for example, a terrorist who wants to kill large numbers of Americans. Note that this depends on the person. An individual right-winger might assign different levels of humanity to different groups than what I just listed. Different right-wingers might also assign quite different levels of humanity to illegal immigrants. And yes, I do think that some right-wingers assign less humanity to illegal immigrants than I would personally like. How someone thinks people in certain groups should be treated often depends on how much humanity they assign to those groups. So for example, an individual right-winger might be fine with a terrorist being tortured for information. The individual right-winger may not think that an activist left-winger who blocks traffic should be tortured, but they may be fine with them being treated roughly by police, and maybe getting some bruises in the process. The individual right-winger might think that a moderate left-winger doesn't deserve to be treated roughly by police, but then again, the individual right-winger may not be willing to altruistically help a moderate left-winger with car trouble. And the individual right-winger may be willing to altruistically help another right-winger with car trouble. Again, these are just examples of how one individual right-winger might look at things. Hopefully you get the underlying point. Different people assign different levels of humanity to groups of other people, and consequently treat them differently, and are okay with different kinds of treatment for those people. The exact same thing goes for the left. They too assign different levels of humanity to different groups, and consequently are fine with certain people and groups being treated in ways that they wouldn't tolerate in other cases. For example, New York City was on the southern border, then the left would suddenly be more concerned with illegal immigration. Because then people they assign full humanity to, New Yorkers, are in trouble, and not just people that the left assigns less humanity to, namely Texans. Or as another example, many people on the left are mostly fine with Trump being convicted in quite an unfair trial, even in a context where other people aren't being dragged in front of a court. Why is the left fine with this? That's because most left-wingers assign little humanity to Trump. However, imagine if this situation had happened the other way around, 4 years ago. So imagine that Trump was still president, and imagine that Biden, and only Biden, gets dragged in front of a court and unfairly convicted while being a presidential candidate. Democrats wouldn't have tolerated that at all. Why? Because left-wingers assign full humanity to Biden, but not to Trump. The right loves to accuse the left of not having principles, but I think it's more accurate to say that the left doesn't assign a lot of humanity to Trump and to Trump supporters. That's why they're fine with things like the Trump trial. This isn't exclusive to the left. The right also often doesn't extend their principles to people who they don't assign a lot of humanity to. Hence, the right might be fine with terrorists being tortured, or with Israel committing, in my opinion, genocide against Palestinians. Why? Because some people on the right assign far more humanity to Israelis than to Palestinians. Someone is fine with someone else being treated unfairly, but I wouldn't start out by thinking that they're either uninformed about their injustice, or they're hypocritical, that they lack principles. I would start out by wondering, just how much humanity is this person assigning to the people who are being mistreated? After all, the vast majority of people are fine if people whom they don't assign a lot of humanity to are mistreated. This is also why groups of perfectly fine people in your world suddenly turn into genocide-supporting monsters. The group is dehumanized enough. Hence, dehumanizing language and dehumanizing propaganda and dehumanizing news is a very good predictor of that group being treated poorly. In fact, it's well known in your world that dehumanization is one step towards genocide. Now, I'm absolutely not saying that right-wingers in America are being or are going to get genocide. I'm just saying that it's less about principles and more about degrees of humanity that are being assigned to groups. That if you dehumanize a certain group, then otherwise perfectly normal people will suddenly think that it's fine if the now dehumanized group gets treated poorly. This also means that if news networks and prominent people consistently speak in dehumanizing or quasi-dehumanizing terms about certain groups of people, then that can create an environment where people are fine with that group being mistreated. This is something that both the left and the right should be careful about. Labels are unfortunately effective at this. Someone says Tom should be censored, but most people would disagree. But if someone says Tom is a far-right extremist, he should be censored, then many people suddenly agree, even if Tom isn't actually a far-right extremist in the first place. Such is the power of labels. Political debate in the US is often so fruitless and frustrating because the left and right assign different levels of humanity to different groups. For example, the right generally assigns less humanity to illegal immigrants than the left does, which contributes to the left accusing the right of being racist. The left often assigns less humanity to Trump supporters than Trump supporters assign to average left-wingers, because Trump supporters think that left-wingers are still Americans after all. This contributes to some people on the right seeing the left as crazy and out of control and unprincipled and amoral and hypocritical. Often if there's a political discussion that seems to go nowhere, the fundamental problem is that left and right assign different levels of humanity to the group in question. And this isn't only about the political left versus the political right. You can see this in, for example, the fact that the average American cares much more about the death of Americans than they care about the death of, let's say, Iraqis. This is because many Americans don't assign full humanity to Iraqis. Similarly, lots of women don't assign full humanity to men, in large parts because of past oppression, because some men still mistreat women. That's why more or less zero women are protesting against men consistently receiving harsher sentences for the same crime that women do. Meanwhile, millions of women will be marching in protest if courts consistently gave harsher sentences to women than to men for the same crime. Of course, even if men are more violent, that doesn't mean that it's fair to give a harsher sentence to a man than to a woman for the same crime. But that is commonly happening consistently. So why aren't women protesting against anti-male systemic discrimination in courts, while women would absolutely protest against anti-female systemic discrimination in courts? As I said, it's because lots of women don't assign full humanity to average men. Now sure, women will assign full humanity to men they know and like. However, average unknown men are potential creeps, potential predators, potential harassers, potential racists, potential incels, potential Trump voters, etc. It's to the point where some women apparently assign more humanity to a bear than to a man, saying they would rather meet a bear in the forest than meet a man. On one hand, I have compassion for Earth women because indeed far too many women get assaulted by men. On the other hand, the vast majority of men aren't doing anything wrong. They don't deserve being subject to systemic discrimination, actually being subject to collective punishment. Imagine saying that an ethnic group of immigrants that all of them are considered to be suspicious until proven innocent because statistically they commit more crimes. That's why cops and courts and hiring processes are going to openly discriminate against them. Imagine saying to an ethnic group of immigrants that it's up to the good people in the group to correct the behaviour of the bad ones, and that systemic discrimination against the entire group will continue so long as the bad apples in the group remained active. Everyone would see that as monstrously unfair, very counterproductive. Similarly, treating men in this way is monstrously unfair, very counterproductive too. So, what is the solution to people only assigning limited amounts of humanity to others? It is. People should work on raising their own level of consciousness and meeting their own needs and dealing with their own fear and pain. And as you do that, you might succeed at assigning more humanity to more people, and in time even include more people into your definition of I. You become a more civilized human being that way. Ideally, assign full humanity to everyone, even if you feel economically or physically threatened by immigrants, or if you feel physically threatened by men, etc. Hence, ideally, speak up if people you dislike get systemically treated in a way that you wouldn't tolerate if it happened to people whom you do like. Also, part of the solution is empathy. Part of the solution is listening to other groups of people. Because if groups of people listen to each other, then generally they will assign a higher level of humanity to each other afterwards, which means that they think that the other group needs to be treated at least reasonably well. So listening to each other matters, even if you completely disagree. I hope this was helpful. I love you and I wish you a very good week. Your star brother, Hakann.